Today I want to talk about a character who defies every law of a shonen protagonist. A character who cannot speak, cannot hear, and cannot even swing a sword. But despite his silence, he has one of the loudest souls in the history of anime. Because behind that wide, frozen smile, there is a psychological war being fought every single second. A war against a world that decided he was a mistake before he even took his first breath. What does it mean to be a king when you are seen as a defect? What does it mean to lead when your own people look at you with nothing but pity? For most, strength is defined by what you can do. The enemies you defeat, the power you wield, the fear you command. But for Bojji, strength is defined by what he refuses to become. This is the tragedy and the triumph of the boy who was born to be a giant, but ended up as a shadow. Bojji was born into a world where Ousama Ranking isn't just a title, it's a biological hierarchy. His father, King Bosse, is a literal giant, a man who traded his own son's strength for his own godlike power. Think about the weight of that betrayal. Bojji didn't just happen to be weak, he was robbed. He was stripped of his inheritance before he was even born by the person who was supposed to protect him most. He is the firstborn prince of a warrior kingdom, yet he is the only one who cannot participate in its culture. He is a ghost wandering through his own castle. And here is the psychological wound that most people miss: the trauma of pity. Rejection is loud, it's aggressive, you can fight back against it. But pity? Pity is a slow-acting poison. It's suffocating. When people hate you, they at least acknowledge your presence as a threat. But when they pity you, they erase your potential. They look at Bojji and they don't see a person. They see a broken object. They speak about his disabilities right in front of him, laughing or sighing, thinking that because he can't hear, he can't understand. But Bojji can read lips. He hears every insult with his eyes. He feels every drop of condescension. He carries the weight of an entire kingdom's disappointment on his small, fragile shoulders. And what is his response? He smiles. This is what psychologists call a mascot defense. When a child realizes that their very existence makes the adults around them feel uncomfortable, sad, or guilty, they overcompensate by becoming the happy one. Bojji smiles so that others don't have to feel the pain of his reality. He performs happiness to make his oppressors feel better. But we see the truth in the quiet moments. We see him go to his room, lock the door, and cry until his body shakes. And the most heartbreaking part? He cries in total silence. He doesn't even have the luxury of a scream to release his agony. He is trapped in a soundless prison of his own emotions, where the only audience to his suffering is the cold, empty walls of his chamber. This is the loneliness of the silenced. To have a heart full of gold and a mind full of dreams, but no bridge to connect them to the world. Then there is Kage, the only being who truly saw him. Kage is a survivor of a massacre, a shadow who has lived in the dirt. He is the only one who realized that Bojji's kindness isn't a lack of intelligence. It's a conscious, radical choice. In a world that treats him like trash, Bojji has every right to be the most bitter, hateful villain in history. He has every right to burn the kingdom that mocked him. But he chooses to remain soft. This isn't weakness. This is the ultimate form of rebellion. To remain kind in a world that is determined to make you cruel is the most difficult thing a human being can do. But even with Kage, Bojji still struggles with the paradox of validation. He pushes himself to be a king not because he wants power, but because he wants to prove to his father's ghost that he wasn't a mistake. He seeks the Ousama Ranking to validate a life that everyone else marked as worthless. This is the trap of measuring your worth by the standards of the people who broke you. Bojji tries to swing a sword like a giant because that's what kings do. He fails over and over because he is trying to use a ruler that wasn't made for him. He is trying to fit a soul that belongs to the stars into a box made of lead. It's only when he meets Despa that the narrative shifts from tragedy to deconstruction. Despa doesn't try to fix Bojji. He doesn't give him a magical hearing aid or giant strength. Instead, he teaches Bojji to master his own nature. Bojji is fast because he is small. He is precise because he had to observe the world more closely than anyone who can hear. Despa teaches him that his disability is actually his specialization. Bojji becomes the strongest not by becoming a giant, but by becoming the best version of a weak boy. He stops trying to be his father and starts trying to be himself. He learns that the throne isn't a seat of power, but a place of service. However, the real climax of his journey isn't the final battle. It's the confrontation with his own internalized shame. Throughout the series, Bojji has to face those who betrayed him: his brother Daida, his stepmother Hyling, and even Domus, the man who literally pushed him into a pit of fire. And in every instance, he offers forgiveness where others would offer a blade. This is the strength of the vulnerable. Bojji knows what it's like to be at the bottom, so he refuses to look down on anyone. He proves that a king's greatness isn't measured by how many people bow to him, but by how many people he can lift up. He transforms the kingdom from a hierarchy of strength into a community of compassion. Bojji's story is a mirror for all of us living in this chaotic modern world. We live in a world that is too loud, a world obsessed with rankings, social status, and external metrics of success. We are told that if we aren't extraordinary, we are nothing. We are told to hide our flaws, to mask our struggles, and to shout our worth until someone listens. But Bojji teaches us the quiet truth of existence. True strength isn't the ability to inflict pain, but the capacity to endure it and still offer a hand to the person who hurt you. It is the resilience to wake up every morning in a world that hates you and decide to love it anyway. True worth isn't something given by a title, a grade, or a ranking, but something found in the quiet moments of choosing to keep going when every instinct tells you to give up. True victory isn't making the world look at you, but making the world see itself through your kindness. It is changing the hearts of those around you by being the only honest person in a room full of liars. In the end, Bojji doesn't need to gain a voice. His life is the message. His silence is the scream that shattered the corrupt foundations of his kingdom. He is the prince who was born with nothing, but ended up teaching us everything about what it means to be truly human. The tragedy of Bojji isn't his deafness or his lack of speech. The tragedy is a world that was too blind to see that the smallest person in the room was actually the biggest giant of them all. He stood tall when everyone else was bent by greed. He stayed pure when everyone else was stained by ambition. He chose to stay in the world that mocked him. He chose to save the people who doubted him. And in doing so, he showed us that your value isn't something people give you. It's something you decide for yourself every single day. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do isn't proving everyone wrong. It's smiling through the silence, knowing who you are, and moving forward anyway. Because as long as you have the courage to be kind, you aren't just a prince. You are already a king.